I walked in on my landlord bending my wife over. I deleted 3 years of her hard work. I've been reading posts here for a very long time, and I always used to be one of those people who felt like you could trust some women, not all of them are bad, and all of that. I mean, I was saying all that because, say, I've been married for 6 years, and I've always been able to trust my wife. She's always been so truthful to me, and I've never had a reason to doubt her. Looking back, I see how stupid that was. As cliché as it might be, you really can't trust anyone, not family, not friends, not lovers. I, a 33-year-old male, have been married to my wife, Paula, a 31-year-old female, for 6 years now. Things have been good, obviously. There are ups and downs, but compared to a lot of the marriages that I'm somewhat privy to, I think we had a good deal going on. Now, with the way our lives are, we don't have the money to handle a mortgage, so we rent. The way the house is set up is like a large building with 4 full-blown apartments in it. The landlord lives in one of those apartments, my wife and I rent one, and there are 2 other sets of tenants taking up the other 2. Our landlord is older than us by quite a bit. I'd place him at 50-something or so. He's generally nice to us, though we tend to have some clashes with him here and there. For the most part, though, I wouldn't say that we're super close with one another. We might send him a slice of cake if there's a birthday, but apart from that, he doesn't know too much of our business, and I prefer things that way. We've been renting the place for about 4 years now. So one thing that's necessary to know is that my wife is a copywriter. She works almost exclusively remotely. She sometimes has to go into the office, but that's probably about once or twice a month. Most of the time, she's at home. As for me, I'm essentially always at work. I work 6 days a week, most weeks, though sometimes I take the full weekend off. I'm not a workaholic. It's just a demanding job. I mean, the fact that I'm essentially always at work definitely makes me understand how what happened was able to happen. And now I'm just wondering how long it truly has been happening. The problem started on a day when I had gone to work but wasn't feeling too great. I don't fall sick often, and I usually power through it. But besides the way I was feeling, I just wasn't in the mood to push myself to work, so I decided to take the day off. I'm in the good books of my bosses, so it wasn't too big a deal. Here I was, feeling that I'd be able to go home and surprise my darling wife with a bit of a day to ourselves. Sure, I wasn't feeling awesome, but me being at home on my own should have meant something. I parked the car, and honestly, as I entered the house, not a single thing seemed off to me. I mean, how was I supposed to know? I was slightly alarmed when I got home, though, and I saw that the door was just slightly open. That was worrying because it was never like that, but then again, I was also never at home around that time. There was no good excuse for the door to not be closed, especially if she was actually in the house. Well, when I walked in, I saw my wife in just a t-shirt, pee up over the back of the couch, with the landlord's pants down around his ankles, plowing her. I stood there in disbelief for I don't know how long because it was such an incomprehensible sight for me. It took me a few seconds before I said, "What the hell is going on here?" It was clear what was happening, but I had to ask because I was still in some kind of disbelief. When they heard my voice, they both jerked upright. My wife squealed, and the landlord rushed to pull his pants up and hobble past me. I was so tempted to throw the heaviest punch I ever had, but I somehow had enough presence of mind to not do that to a 50-year-old. I've heard too many stories of older people dying after being decked, and as much as I wanted to kill both of them, I knew I couldn't actually do that. But oh my goodness, what has I attempted to so bad? I let him run past me since I knew I'd figure out a way to deal with him later. That just left the cheating hoe and me in the room, and I was so furious that I didn't even know what to actually do. I just stood there shaking with rage because all I wanted to do was hit her. That wasn't a viable option, at least not the way I was raised. She was holding her t-shirt close to her body as if she was naked or cold or something, and that part pissed me off even more. "So this is what happens when I'm not at home, huh?" was the first thing that I managed to say. Then she started stuttering, trying to paint it like it was some kind of one-time occurrence, but the words weren't coming out of her mouth smoothly. She was trembling, looking back, and that part of it gave me some kind of sick satisfaction, though, considering the circumstances. I don't think anyone can blame me. The part I'm not too proud of is when I walked up to her and grabbed the collar of her shirt and yanked her close to me. She kept averting her eyes, and the fact that she couldn't look me in the eye after I caught her cheating on me with our landlord really pissed me off. So, I yanked her collar to force her to look at me, but she kept diverting her gaze. "Look at me, witch!" But she still didn't. So I just pushed her away, and she crumbled to the ground. I swear, I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to physically hurt her in that moment, and I was holding myself back so bad. I eventually just turned around and walked right back out of the house. She croaked, "Babe," as I was going, but I knew that if I didn't keep walking, I'd do something I would regret a lot. So, I just got in my car and started driving around aimlessly in the middle of the afternoon. God, I felt so horrible that day. I was having the most twisted thoughts, so I just kept driving around the same block over and over, so that I would at least have something to keep my mind off of it. After all, I knew where both of them lived, and I didn't want to end up in the papers. Eventually, I parked in a Walmart parking lot and just sat there until it was dark. Then I drove back home, walked inside, and I saw her sitting on the couch. Yes, the same couch I had just seen her being railed on. Her eyes were all red, like she had been crying non-stop since I left. That didn't move me, of course, because she didn't regret what she did. She only regretted the fact that I caught her doing it. "Please, baby, I want to talk to you. Please sit down," she said quietly and hoarsely, through a lot of sniffling. I couldn't help myself, so I asked her if she had continued that deed with the landlord in the time I was gone. She just started crying all over again. I was amused, despite the entire situation. "Please just sit down with me. I'm begging you." So somehow, I actually sat down across from her, waiting to hear what she wanted to tell me so badly. She was sit there looking at me for a few minutes before she started to apologize and talk about how sorry she was. She explained how it was a stupid decision, how she was horny, and how she stupidly accepted a suggested remark from him. Then, the next thing I knew, there were more waterworks. She claimed it had only ever happened that one time and that it would never happen again. Somehow, she sounded genuine, but cheating is never a mistake. In the moment, you know that you're not meant to be doing it, and you can stop yourself at any moment. But no, she was enjoying that pleasure more than everything that we had built up over the years. I knew that if I made the mistake of saying yes to her, I would live with regret almost every single day. I would never see her the same. Honestly, I knew I would never be able to not resent her. The fact that the landlord still lives in the same building made it even harder. I just told her to stop and let her know that there was no fixing it, no matter what she did or said. It was over. I wanted to kick her out of the house, but I couldn't because I could not stay in the same house as the landlord. I really knew I couldn't. It would drive me mad. I didn't even want to know what I'd do because I know how my negative emotions get in the nighttime, especially when I'm alone. So, I just went into the bedroom after that and started packing a bunch of my things. Then I left. She tried to beg me to stay, saying that she'd go instead, but I couldn't help but tell her that I couldn't bear to separate her and her man. She started crying all over again, so I just walked out of the house. I've been staying in a hotel for the past 2 days and have called in sick to work. I'm writing this now from my hotel room because I really need to talk to someone about all of this, and this feels like I need unpatrolled. It hurts so bad, and I never want to feel this way again. I'm feeling very resentful towards women right now. Anyway, I want to figure out a way to get back at her. That's all I really need right now. I think it's the only thing that I can do to make me feel even slightly better. It really won't fix all my problems right now, only time will do that, but I need to make her hurt. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. It sounds like an absolute nightmare. I can't even imagine how it must have felt to come home hoping to surprise your wife, only to walk into that scene. Cheating isn't something that just happens by accident. It's a series of choices, and she made them, knowing full well what she was risking. Update 1. Well, I did something to get back at Paula, and while a part of me feels really horrible about it, another part of me is very satisfied. I wish I didn't have a conscience sometimes, so I could give her what she deserves without getting soft. But I've done something already, and I think it's a pretty comparable pain for her. In the previous post I made, I think I mentioned Paula being a writer. Well, as much as she does copywriting for work, she's always wanted to write a book. She's big on fiction, the kind that people like calling Hoover, right? Since we've met, she's had dreams of writing her own novel, and it was only about 3 years ago that she finally started working on a manuscript. I feel so stupid looking back at how proud I was of her and how much I encouraged her to get it done. That encouragement and energy eventually paid off for her, and after about 3 years she was over 90% done with it. She just needed to finish up the climax of the story, and that would have been it. To be honest, I had been reading it chapter by chapter, and admittedly it was a very good story. I was looking forward to reading it all over again once she completed it. But that's not going to happen because that's where I got my lick back in. So, I told this woman that I was going to come back home for a bit so we could talk things over. I went back, and she seemed pretty happy to see me back in the house. I knew that I wasn't ready to talk things over, but I had to be close to her. She ended up talking about how much she regretted what she did, how she'll never even talk to the landlord again, how she loves me so much and refuses to let me go, and on and on. I just said okay and told her I'd think about all of it. However, that night, I still slept in the living room because I couldn't stand being in the same bed as her. I told her that I needed time before we got back to that point. The good thing is, she left her laptop on her coffee table in the living room, and that was what I was there for all along. She had her manuscript stored on her computer as well as on the cloud for backup purposes. I deleted both of them and also made sure they were gone from the trash too. I'll admit that I hesitated for a full minute before doing it, but I just had to remember the scene I walked in on, and I did it right away. I do feel a little bad about it. That's the downside of having a conscience, but it is what it is. It's the least I could do to pay her back for what she put me through. The next day, she woke up and things were normal. She didn't even touch her laptop that day. The following day, things were equally normal and she started doing her regular work, but it didn't seem like she touched her manuscript. It was on the third day that she seemed to notice it was missing. She started to panic immediately and asked me if I happened to have a backup of the manuscript, perhaps one she had sent to me all the times I would preview the chapters for her. I realized in that moment that I actually did, but I told her I didn't. She asked me to check on my computer, and I did, though I deleted them right away and told her that I don't have what she needed. She started pulling at her hair and asked me if I deleted her manuscript. I acted shocked and told her that I would never do anything that low, no matter how I felt about her. She was looking at me doubtfully, but I told her that was too sleazy for me. She was the one who knew how to hurt me, not the other way around. Then she started crying again. Right there, I made it seem like I had a realization and told her that I couldn't try this whole thing with her again. She had cut me too deep and I had to go. At that point, she started wailing. Her manuscript was gone, and the renewed hope that she had was just dashed. I packed as many of my things into my car as I could and told her to be back to get the rest at some point. But before I left, I said, "Sorry about your book, but it's in your head. You can always start over." And then I walked out of there. I've been staying in a cheap short-term accommodation while looking for housing. I can't stay in that house, not with that landlord there, so she can have it. There's only a few months left on the lease, so it won't be my problem anymore. I know she can't pay for the place on her own, but she can always move in with the landlord if times get tough. All I know is that I'm done with her, and that's all that matters. Now, I've served her with divorce papers too. I don't mind letting the house go. I'll make sure I get something more useful than that from her in return. Unfortunately, it's not like I have proof of the cheating, but we aren't on the same page. So, if she gets to stay in the apartment, I'll make sure she essentially pays for wherever I'm going next. Update. Well, I know this is months after my last update, but I just thought I should drop in to give you all a very quick update on the story of Paula, my ex-wife, who slept with our landlord. Yes, she's now officially an ex-wife. Good riddance to that. I don't have to pay any alimony. I left the house to her and was able to negotiate a small but not insignificant lump sum, along with the car that we had shared, after we finalized the divorce. I asked her how her book was going, and she flared up. She said she knew that I was the one that deleted it and that she would never forgive me for it. She had started writing again, but according to her, it's not the same. She called me evil, and I told her that made two of us. I said it right there. Anything bad that happened to her was just karma and had nothing to do with me. I'm glad that it's over. I never would have predicted this is how things would have turned out between us because I always did my part to make things happy. But you can't control the actions of the other person in a relationship. I'm strong, so I know I'm going to find a way to move on from all of this. Getting out of that house and cutting those ties is a big step in reclaiming your own peace. As for deleting Paula's manuscript, I can see why you felt that was a way to level the scales. She took something irreplaceable from you when she betrayed your trust. And in a way, her book represented something irreplaceable for her. Now, as tough as it was, it sounds like you're ready to move forward without all that weight dragging you down, even if there's still some healing left to do. It's clear that you're resilient and already taking charge of your life again. You've got this. What do you make of this? Would you have done the same?